What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Rodeo Wagon podcast, brought to you by the Western Edge app and produced by Cosmic Cowboys. We're here with Travis Finley, owner of Slingin Shanks, probably the best known spur company in the bull riding world. What have you been up to? You been busy?
I've been real busy actually. Just making spurs every day usually.
Do you just do bull riding spurs? Are you in the equine side at all?
I'm in the equine side a little bit. Like like if somebody wants to order a set of horse spurs, like I'll build them how they want to. And I've gotten a lot into the fancy side of it, the engraving and the silver and all that. And I've took a few classes on horse spurs and how to build bits and stuff like that. But bull riding spurs will always be the passion and the main source.
And you said you actually, did you learn to ride bulls? Did you ride bulls under Ray Cox, or you just live with him and kind of
Actually,
learn
like
trade?
I'd been getting on calves and steers up until probably from 5 till maybe 16. And then we lived in Muscatine, Iowa, which is about 2 or 3 hours away from Ray's. And we would go down there and practice. And then when I graduated high school, I went to live with him. And like he basically taught me everything from life to bull riding to everything.
Man, that wild peacocks, and you never knew
Oh
what you were gonna see when you showed up to Ray Cox farm. Never knew.
no,
There could be
like
a
they
buffalo out
always
in the
say,
field or something.
yeah, they always say that you can't teach a guy how to try, but I really believe Ray could do it.
Man, Ray Cox's way of teaching was so fascinating for me. Like when I went up there, because I spent the first year, I didn't go to anywhere else. I didn't go to any
Yeah,
rodeos. I just went up to Ray's, and I told him, I said, when you think I'm ready to go rodeo, then you let me know. And so he kind of took me under his wing at that point. But he never really taught me like, hey, you need to use your knees more, or you need to do
yeah,
this. But
exactly.
what he would do is he'd put me on certain bulls. And he knew
Yeah,
that certain bulls were gonna create feels, and I would feel certain things. And really, that's how he taught me, was just putting me
yeah.
on different bulls that he knew would create feelings in my riding that I was gonna need, as I
Yeah,
continued.
that sounds exactly like I didn't think about it at the time, but it sounds exactly what he was doing with me. Like I
I,
remember the first week I lived with him, we baled hay, it seemed like all week. And he looked at his son TJ Dodd. He looked at him and he said, "You think he's worked hard enough to get on a few bulls?" And like I was completely drained, and that was became a weekly thing.
yeah, yeah, and he back in the day he did it all. He was bull rider, bronc rider, saddle
Oh
bronc
yeah,
rider,
yeah,
and I think he boxed too. Freaking
yeah. He did everything. It seemed like he had a part in everything. Like he said that he helped invent the first bucking machine. Like like I know so many stories about him, and like he competed at the NFR where Freckles Brown rode Tornado.
I believe he lived with Jim Shoulders there for a while. Traveled with
Yeah,
him anyway.
I don't remember any Jim Shoulder stories, but I definitely don't doubt it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But yeah, so that's kind of crazy that, you kind of got started right there. I had no idea until the other day when you were saying that, because that's
Yeah,
where I met Matt Wearies, Caleb
yeah.
Wood, those guys.
Well, see, like anytime somebody brings him up, like it's a name you don't hear of, especially now. But like he made such a difference in so many people, and like I don't feel like he gets enough credit for it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think it's one of the places, at least around here, where, there's not too many places to get on bulls, out in Texas and stuff, like it's everywhere. And I mean, right
Yeah,
here in Missouri, probably in Illinois, it's not like there's just tons of places where you can go and get on quality stock, if you're starting out, or, even if you
yeah.
are more advanced without traveling, a long ways.
And it was like at his house, you didn't have to. look for something that fit. Like he knew exactly which one would fit you.
Yep.
And I don't know about when you was going out there, but he had bareback horses, saddle broken horses that he'd run in the practice pen. Like you could do it all there.
He had him there, but there wasn't a whole lot of guys at that time
Yeah,
frame that I was
okay,
there.
yeah.
There wasn't a whole lot of guys getting on horses, so it was more just not as enough guys getting on. You know.
Yeah, yeah. Because I don't know how the practice pen was arranged with you, but with us it was every Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday. $35 all you could ride.
Yeah, it was $35 all you could ride, and it was every Sunday. And then I would go up
Okay.
on like Tuesday, Wednesday every now and again with Caleb Rule, and we would
Yeah.
do some. But so how did you kind of went from there? How did you get introduced into the spur making?
Well, that was back in '98 when I stayed with him. And then I rode bulls real heavy from probably '99 till 2013 to 15. And I had a buddy of mine that I was going with that was he was wanting to try a new pair, a longer shank, because back then, like the 3-inch shanks was everybody wanted them. And so instead of him going off and paying somebody to build them, because there wasn't hardly any spur makers like for bull riding
Right.
back then.
There's still not a
And
lot.
yeah, and I told him, I said, well, I've been wanting to make my own spurs. I said, just let me build you a pair and see how you like them. Well, I built them, and then I had the owner of TK Specialties. He seen them, Michael Bodick. And then he said, who made them spurs? And then he pointed to me and asked me if I wanted to do a wholesale agreement. And it caught fire after that. And then probably a year into it, I'd known JB ever since he was little. And I'd seen him at a local rodeo. He was a pickup man. And I asked him, I said, JB, if I built you a set of spurs, would you wear them? He said, why not? He said, why not? And ever since he did, like, I'll tell you what he has done for Slingin Shanks is I can't explain it.
Well, I'll say this, there's nobody out there that, I don't think is even in a position to be able to compete with kind of the brand recognition that you've built up within this community, in the bull riding community specifically.
What?
And I've even talked to, I was at a big cutting championship in
Yeah,
Fort Worth, and really well-known spur maker, was talking about dabbling into the bull riding and the bull
yeah,
riding spurs, and he's talking, and I said, well, there's not a whole lot of guys out there, but there's Slingin Shanks pretty much owns the market, and you put quality spurs at a very affordable price for bull riders, like
yeah.
the price point that you're putting out there, it's going to be hard to beat for the quality that you're making.
Well, like I've been to several gatherings with other spur makers, and they all tell me to raise my price. But I was in the bull riding world long enough to where I know there's a ceiling to it. Like in the horse world, there's no ceiling. Like they
Yeah,
can go
right.
up
Yeah.
10, twenty
Uh-huh.
thousand. But in the bull riding world, they just ain't going to do it.
Yeah, if you charge $400 for a pair of spurs, you're gonna be hard pressed to get very many bull riders.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
there's some out there, and but there's so many guys out there that when I started bull riding, I really wanted to try my hand in saddle bronc, but I couldn't afford a saddle. And
Yeah,
right where I was, I didn't even
exactly.
know where to learn because I was in a place in
Yep,
Missouri where it wasn't prevalent. And so bull riding was a cheap way to get into rodeo.
yeah,
And I just could borrow equipment, and it was, like I bought, when I first bought my equipment, it was like $200 I spent on, bull riding equipment. So like I think that's a huge part of it as well. And you know, there is becoming more money in bull riding, so guys are making more money, but I know what
yeah,
you're saying. In the equine world there isn't a ceiling, but there
yeah,
certainly is in the rodeo world.
yeah. And like it kind of hurt me in the beginning stages of Slinging Shanks because I was always looking at it as as I was the customer. Like I wouldn't pay this much, so there's no way I can charge this much. And because my theory on it, and it may or may not have cost me going certain places, but my theory on Spurs especially was I could buy a $40 saddle barn set and buy 5 sets of them that ruin before I could buy a $200 set.
Yeah.
That 5 cheap sets would outlast that one good set.
Right. Yeah, so I guess on that point, because I was thinking about this, like, so you are making high quality spurs, and
Yeah.
for some guys they don't go through spurs that often. Some guys are switching their equipment up all the time. You know,
Yeah.
what does that look like on a business side of things? How do you look at how you can
Well,
I
like
don't know if you provide value. What do you do in terms of that? Because some guys will go
I
5 years without getting a new set.
I have really like put a lot of thought into that exact question. Like I've even thought of coming up, and like I said, right now it's a thought until I get interest. I've thought of like a Spur subscription,
Oh
like
yeah, yeah,
where
subscription
like you
based.
pay a certain amount every month, but that guarantees you so many pairs every year.
Sure. Yeah, and that's not a bad
Yeah.
idea. And I think that, for a lot of guys, that subscription based is actually really beneficial because, some guys may not be able to afford $200 right now, but
Yeah.
they may
Yeah.
be able to afford, $20 a month or $15 a month
Yeah.
or
Hmm.
$10 a month, and be like, well, if I do this, then, I can maybe, afford to make sure that each year my equipment's staying updated
Yes.
and
Yeah.
it's more affordable to me monthly because a lot of guys are still on months to months paychecks
And the main reason why I've thought about that is because I see Slingin Shanks come back on the market, like in some of them for sale pages on Facebook, and they're selling them for what they paid for. So I know that the value's there.
100%. Yeah, it
And
definitely is. And
yeah.
I think another thing that you did, and I'm not sure which was an interesting deal, like what you were doing with the co-shell routes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what was
But
behind that? Like what
behind that is like for I probably haven't looked hard enough, but ever since I started Slinging Shanks, I've been trying to find a way to get wholesale PBR routes, like
Oh,
get an
okay.
account to where I get them, and I can't find anything on it.
No joke.
Yeah, and I know Beastmaster and Rodeo Mart that they have them, but I don't know how they got them.
Yeah, and I don't know what I wonder what wholesale co-shell routes even cost.
I have no idea. Like I've searched top to bottom looking for it, and
Because
I
at
figured I figured if I give somebody a $50 discount on a set of rows, if they trade in the rows, then it works both ways.
yeah. Yeah.
Because I always get questions on do you carry PBR routes?
But you probably get people that are buying the Spurs and they want Rouse with them.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And I guess since I've been, the PBR every year, it's part of what we pay in when we buy our
yes, yeah,
PBR card is to get Rouse. So and I don't
yeah,
I don't switch up my equipment just a ton.
yeah.
So I've just, I'll get some of them rows just laying around for a
Oh
minute. I was trying to get the Brazilian rows and every different kind of rows that they allow. Just not because I'm going to
yeah,
use them, just because heck, I can hang them on the wall or
uh-huh.
something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Yeah, like them, like you brought up Brazilians, like I love working with the Brazilians, like 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 especially Eduardo Aparecido. Like
Oh yeah.
he's like I guess Paulo Crimber is the interpreter for the PVR. Eduardo's like my interpreter for the Slinging Shanks. Like like when the new guys come over, he'll order spurs through him, but he'll give them like they'll end up in their hands. And like he he's probably ordered 16 pairs this year.
No joke. Yeah, and so then you have that. Guys that probably order a bunch. And he
Yeah,
probably will helping other guys order too. So he's probably
yeah,
ordering a bunch for, all of his buddies. Man, the first time I got a like true Brazilian rope, I was at an event and I got it from Kyler Oliver. And
Yeah.
Eduardo, because I was just gonna just put it on right there without it
Yeah.
stretched, and he's like, no, no, no. He comes over and he takes it over, and they got a whole system together, pulling out the pliers,
Oh,
twisting that
I'll
freaking
tell you,
handle over, and
I would be willing to bet that Eduardo studies equipment better than any person in the world. Because like he'll order a pair of Spurs that are zero point 0.2 centimeters different than the last pair he ordered, and like because a lot of them Brazilians that they don't deal in the English system, the inches and
yeah.
it's always centimeters with him.
Does he? Okay, that's interesting. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, and it took
He-
me a while to I guess relate to how they look at things. Like the very first one of the first Brazilians that I built for was Guilherme Marchi. And when he messaged me, he said, I want my Spurs 3 fingers long. And I couldn't understand what he meant, 3 fingers long. And then he sent me a picture with just his 3 fingers next to a shank.
That
And
is
I'm
funny.
thinking, I know you're a little bigger than me. Your fingers are probably different. But
Uh,
he didn't know any other way to relate it.
that's awesome. Do you sell like much to over in Brazil? Like, do you have many people in Brazil order? Do you do international shipping?
I've only sent one pair actually to Brazil. And like the other like I've sent one pair to Brazil, one pair to England. Um
England? There's bull riders in England. No joke.
yeah, yeah. I was amazed at it too. And I send quite a bit to Canada and quite a bit to Australia.
Yeah. Hey there, folks. I want to tell you about my favorite cowboy hat brand, Sombrero Brands. As a professional bull rider, I know how important it is to have a hat that not only looks good, but can withstand the toughest rides out there. And that's exactly what Sombrero Brands delivers. Their hats are custom fitted and shaped to perfection, with a level of attention to detail that's hard to find these days. But what really sets Sombrero Brands apart is the fact that they're a family owned and operated business. Mark and Kendall Holler, the owners, and their daughter Sarah, who's only 13 but already a hat making prodigy, are all passionate about their craft. They know what it takes to make a cowboy hat that can stand up to anything the rodeo circuit can throw at it. And get this, the founder's grandfather, Polly Holler, was born and raised at South Camp on the 4-6's ranch. These folks have got cowboy blood running through their veins, and it shows in every hat they make. That's why I'm proud to have Sombrero Brands as a major sponsor for my podcast, the Rodeo Wagon podcast. So if you're in the market for a hat that's tough enough to handle anything the rodeo throws at it, give Sombrero Brands a try. Trust me, you won't be disappointed.
I would love to find a distributor like Canada and Australia.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, once you get into that international waters, it's
Yeah,
it opens the door tremendously because there's a lot of bull riders in Australia. There's a
yeah,
ton of bull riders in Brazil.
yeah.
The language barrier is probably the biggest thing when you're talking about
Well, I've
Brazil.
learned Google Translate is my best friend when it comes to that because they'll send it to me and I'll translate it, and then actually as a favor to them and out of respect for them, I'll type it out, and it takes forever, but I'll type it out and translate it into Portuguese and send it back to
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Even at the events, sometimes I'll do that if I'm talking to somebody that one of the
them.
Brazilians that can't really speak very good. He'll pull out his Google Translate, he'll type it in, and then go back and forth. Although anymore, most of the events there's always somebody there that can speak decent English,
Oh,
if
okay,
you're
yeah,
trying to
yeah,
communicate. But a lot of times, like, the ropes and stuff, although, I will say that I feel like this past year, there hasn't been quite as much equipment, but in years past, in the Brazilians, there's always, one or two of them that's got a lot of equipment there, whether that's I think maybe the ropes has to do with the PBR rule system, and so they're
yeah.
not just carrying a bunch of ropes to sell just because, you know, it
Okay, yeah.
likelihood that the judges are gonna go over there and check every single one of them or mess with it.
Have you seen their shank style on their spurs?
I have. I actually I tried that. So um in California. Junior Patrick Soda.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah. So I saw what they were doing with that, and so I had him send me a couple different sets of different styles, and I
yeah,
tried them out. I went back to my regular, and then honestly, this last year, it was mid-season when I made my spur
yeah.
change. Tremendous change. I don't know. So I guess I don't know if Andrew Alvidrez had you make them, or if he told you to make them some like somebody else. But then Keith Hall told you to make them like Andrew
Like
Alvidrez.
Andrew,
And
and
then
then
I
you.
saw Keith's,
Yep,
and Keith is like, man, he's like, these will get a hold. And so I said, make mine just like Keith's. And then um Dakota Warnkin, he saw
yep,
mine, and he's like, I want like, dang,
yep.
freaking Slingin Shanks is gonna have to like brand these and call them something
Well,
because
well,
everybody wants them.
I do actually. Those are they're listed on the website as the Kelly style.
The Kelly style, okay.
And the reason why it's Kelly style was because back in like the 70s, maybe even earlier or later, but there was a Kelly style Buran spur, and it had that same style of shank.
Okay, that's kind of twisted. It's almost a twisted shank.
Well, the Kelly style, I've never seen any of the old Kellys be twisted. Like I really think that was a new thing that come along when like Jerome Davis got partnered with Saddle Barn or
Okay,
CLG, whichever one he was paired with. I really think that was part of his idea.
that was part of his idea. That's interesting. I'd never had
Because
one that was twisted so much. And I mean, I think for me too is like the progression on like when you're getting on really good bulls that are bucking hard, you have to use your
yeah,
knees so much more. And when you're using your knees so much more, it's not as natural for you to get your toes turned out quite as much. So by getting some, rows that are, I like the teardrop, but then the twisted in like that, I
yeah.
don't have to, I can knee up and I don't have to like really focus on turning my toes out a ton and you get hold. And I think that's where I found that they're exceptional
Well,
in being able to keep your feet.
that's the exact reason. I've talked to Jerome about it, and he said that's the exact reason. Like he kind of like I guess fathered that design was because like if you watch a lot of videos, he was knees in, toes out,
Yeah,
and he said whenever his knee would come up, it would cause the top of his row to dig in if it was twisted.
interesting.
And uh, like a fun fact, JB always has me twist them a little farther.
A little farther, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. No, that's interesting. I hadn't, again, I've had ones that were more turned in, but that twisting, I really like that. And
yeah. And Jess Lockwood, he said the same exact thing. Like the first pair I ever built him, they weren't twisted at all. And then he wanted to try a set of twisted ones, and he said he'd never change now.
yeah, I won't either. I'll be with twisted. And
Yeah,
to be honest, I kind of went, the same way with like lengths and long
yeah,
versus
yeah.
short. And I had the 3 inch. Um, just for me, the long shanks, my feet bounced a lot more. Shortening the shanks up
That's
really
it.
kind of prevented my feet from bouncing.
Yeah, that's exactly what the first pair I ever made JB, they was 3 inches. And eventually he changed it and he said he wanted to go shorter than that because it felt like it was pushing his ankles out.
Yeah, it is great, which it doesn't really matter now. I've used the Brazilian rope for so long, but back when I had American rope, you could grab your freaking knots with them long shanks. I'll tell you
Yeah,
what, you didn't even have to try to. You just
yeah.
freaking nod your head and you start moving your feet and you'll catch them.
Like as a sperm maker, it kind of became a fad, like a trend or whatever, that the long shanks, everybody wanted them.
I
And
think
for
JB
about,
probably had a lot to do with that because
well,
JB did have long shanks back in the day, and
well,
he
the
even
thing
talked
is,
about it on TV. So
yeah, and the thing is now everybody thinks he's got such long shanks, but like I don't know which pair he's riding with now. It's either 2.5 or 2 3/4.
yeah,
But most of the time, I'm pretty sure it's the 2.5 pair. And people think that they're way long. I think it's because he points his toes so straight that you
yeah.
see the whole side of the fur.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, 3 inches is really long.
Yeah,
honestly, 2 3/4 is pretty freaking long shank, and 2.5 is a long shank. If you buy a
I
two and a
agree.
half inch shank, you bought a long shank. 2 inch. That's going to be on the shorter side, and then your 2 1/4 is probably your standard,
Yeah,
your industry
I
standard,
agree.
I would say.
Like I came up with a kind of a theory with a boar riding spur to where I I believe that if the shank is turned in farther than the inside of the heel band, you're kind of defeating the purpose because it's pushing your ankles out and your toes in.
Yeah, yeah, I see what you're saying.
And so I come up with two measurements that's pretty close to near perfect in my opinion, and
That's interesting.
that'd be 2.5 at 28 with a twist, or 2 1/4 at 33 with a twist.
Huh.
And the reason why I come up with this two is because the end of the shank is in the same spot on both of them, just one shorter.
Just one shorter.
Because of the shorter on the 2 1/4, it's turned in more to hit that same spot.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's interesting. Hmm. Cole Fisher? Did he ever get Slingin Shanks?
Yeah, yeah, he did.
What did he use? I'm curious because he was knees up and I did later in his career he may turned his feet
I
out a little bit more, but
honestly,
he didn't much when were first starting.
this sounds terrible, but I honestly don't remember, and it's only because he ordered shortly before he got hurt.
Oh, okay,
So,
gotcha.
so he'd
Yeah,
only used them.
yeah,
I would say maybe 6 months.
yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, but I don't. Most time, if it's something way off normal, I remember it. So I wouldn't say it was too far off.
Too off. Yeah.
But like I've built some.
What's the most extreme you built?
Well, it goes like a couple. I don't know if I should name names, but I'll tell you about the Spurs.
Yeah, go
Like
for it.
one spur, probably the most craziest was one. You know how, have you ever seen an offset shank spur where it's like not in the center, it's off to the side?
Oh yeah, yes, I have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now this spur, the guy wanted offset on the other side. Like say it's a right spur, he wanted the shank to start from the right side and come in like 90 degrees.
What's the logic behind that?
I don't know.
That's
I
fascinating.
could not tell you. The only thing I could even remotely think is knots. Like you put your feet in and then you just turn your toes out and it like
Mm,
latches on. And then I've had I guess the overall aspect of this set isn't extreme. It's just the length. Like I had a 4.5 inch set that I built.
Dang,
Yeah.
that's pretty freaking extreme. Was it a taller guy or
He
just
said
normal?
he was 6'2", I think.
That's not.
But
I mean, 4.5 inch. That's crazy. I know in
yeah,
growing up on horses and stuff. You always hear the longer the shanks, the taller you are. But
yeah.
I don't really think that applies to bull riding a whole lot, to be honest.
Back in the early days, like when I was riding a lot, that they would say that all the time. But now that I'm a spur maker, I don't think it matters.
Yeah, I don't think it does. In fact, I think that when I went to 3 inch, I did that on that premise.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's not. I think
And
I don't know
the
who
reason why
came up. I don't know who came up with it, but at least it certainly in the bull riding world, I don't think that that principle holds true whatsoever.
I, I I agree with you. And the reason why I say it is because that same shank that JB wears, 2.5 at 28 with a twist. There's so many other guys that wear that, and we can just admit it. Nobody's like JB.
No.
And so there's so many different guys, size wise, um, uh, like style wise, that wear that same spur and they love it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's yeah, and
Now,
do
probably,
you go ahead.
or I was going to say probably the most logical spur that I got out there that makes the most sense to me, other than the dimensions I just mentioned, would be Jess Lockwood's.
Just Lockwood's.
And what he does is he drops the end of the shank like a quarter inch lower than the heel band.
Oh,
And
really?
which I think
Okay.
yours, Andrews, Dakota's, and
It's yeah,
I,
it's
I yeah,
yeah, I
they're
guess.
a little like
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
Jess Lockwood is yeah,
that's
Jess Lockwood
probably
is a little lower.
a what, a quarter, an
Yeah,
eighth. It's I mean it's a little bit lower than that heel band, but you can
yeah,
see, yeah, let's see if I can turn it to,
yeah,
that bend in it. But yeah, these are probably my favorite set I've ever had for sure.
yeah,
And freaking you did a great job on the freaking Western Edge emblem.
yeah.
Do you obviously you do custom spurs, but do you have enough people ordering the same kind that you just make, standard ones that, if somebody orders one that you pretty much know you got something in stock?
I have tried for 10 years to have something in stock, and I've been blessed in the fact that I've never been able to reach that point.
So it's just because you're so busy,
Yeah,
basically.
but I do offer, like, I don't know if you've seen on the website, I do offer like, and I feel like I'm ripping people off, but I have to do it. If you want them 1 to 2 weeks, if you want them finished and shipped in 1 to 2 weeks, it's 25 extra. If you want them finished and shipped in 3 to 5 days, it's 50 extra.
I don't think you're ripping people off at all. In fact, I think that, especially in your position in a niche market, because let's
Yeah,
be honest, the bull riding spur market is a niche
yeah,
market. Um, you have to find ways to be able to monetize your business in a way
yeah.
that makes sense for you to do it. Like, you know, especially in a niche market where what you're selling, this spur, to be honest, I'll never need another spur again, most
Yeah,
likely. I
exactly.
won't need to
Dealing
get
with,
another spur. You could probably, most of your spurs you probably could wear almost your entire career outside of freak deals. I
yeah,
understand you're on a 1,500 2,000 pound bull, and there's accidents that happen in shoots. Outside of anything crazy, like, these spurs last so long. So
yeah,
as a spur maker, and just you doing this, like, you're not getting rich. Like, you're not
yeah.
getting rich off of making bull riding spurs, you know, but hopefully you're able to make enough money to be able to justify doing it, and it's something you love to do. So,
Oh, definitely.
little
Yeah,
things like that, I think that if anybody doesn't understand that, then that's on them. Because honestly, I think that's important for you as a businessman.
it's like I told you. I've been to a couple gatherings. Like they had the annual bit and spur gathering, and like the first year there was 100 different bit and spur makers, and I was the only bull riding spur maker.
Uh-huh.
And you talk to all them other spur makers, they don't want anything to do with it because of all the different variations and the low price point. Like they're trying to push out $1,000 spurs, and all their spurs are shanked straight out for
Yeah.
horses.
Yeah.
So so it complicates their model.
Yeah, 100%.
And like I've another thing along with like the subscription, I've thought about doing like a bull riding spur class, like where
Oh,
you
really?
come for like 3 or 4 days and learn how to build a set of bull riding spurs.
That's that would be interesting. I'd actually, not because I'd probably ever do it, but that would be
Yeah,
something I'd do just to freaking learn. You know what you could also do on that front is, even if they weren't in person, you could start doing some videos, like, doing videos, and even
I actually it's funny you say that because I got a really good friend, Colin Gibson, and that lives in Idaho, and he come and visited me last year, and we did a 1 hour spur build where we
nice.
built a set of horse spurs on YouTube in 1 hour.
Yeah, that's cool.
And
That
like
would be something that you probably could get some traction with.
yeah,
And
Well,
And you
it
could,
right now it's got 9.2 or 3,000 views.
yeah, it's cool.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go look at it. It's gonna have 9.2 or 3,000 plus one here in a little bit
yep,
because I know what I'm
yeah.
gonna be doing.
It's pretty neat.
Because
I,
I've always been fascinated, with some of that stuff. Not fascinated enough to where I've just, dove off into all the research.
yeah.
But even growing up, in Missouri, every year we'd go down to Branson to the Silver Dollar City, for vacation.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's Disney World to a redneck family.
Oh yeah,
And we'd go down there and, you watch them do all of that steel work and all of that kind of
yeah,
stuff. And um yeah, it's interesting, kind of how all of that stuff can get built and how you can shape it and all of that. And how many,
yeah.
as far as when you're building these, how many different, like this isn't one piece. I assume that you're,
No, that's two
how many
pieces.
two pieces. So you
Yeah,
basically you have your shank and then you have
and
your band.
yeah.
And then how are you like, how do you connect it? And do you just heat it up and how does that work? Because it's certainly not
The
welded
band
right there that you can see.
the bands are they're cold bent, so I don't heat the bands up before I bend them.
Uh-huh.
And the shank, it's welded on there. It's TIG welded,
TIG weld. Okay.
and yeah, TIG welded and sanded down and polished. And
Yeah. Man, they sure look good.
thank you.
What about quality? How do you how has that developed or since you started or
I
what have you
have
found that
been
works best?
I have been extremely lucky in the fact that all the thousands of pairs I've put out there, I've been able to have my hands on every pair
Yeah.
so far. I mean, to say that I would like to get to a spot to where that's not true is like a double-edged sword. I mean, it means I'm taking the next step and expanding, but at the same time it means my eyes leave that fur.
Man, isn't that such an interesting conundrum? Because um, you're seeing this in the rope industry right now and honestly, I think it's to the detriment in the rope side of things because literally there's a lot of well-known people that are putting ropes out there that
Yeah,
that are not touching every rope and what they I get it because they need to scale because like how do you justify doing this? This is a lot of time, this is a lot of work. How do I
yeah,
justify building ropes or building spurs when you know the money's kind of you reach a peak maybe because of the
yeah,
market's so niche. However, the detriment on the quality side is, as a guy, if you're ordering a rope, you don't know who's actually making that rope. And there's times where I've in the past ordered a rope from, an individual and, I love their rope. And the next time I order the same one, it's not the same thing. And a lot of it
yeah,
has to do with it's not the same person making it.
yeah. You're exactly right. Like in my business, it's a little different in the fact that it's not so much the niche that I need to expand. It's the fact that I, other than myself, it's my son out there helping me polish and do little
Mhm.
things like part time because he's got a job himself.
Yeah,
And so we're at max capacity.
right.
Like this year alone, we've already shipped out 500 pairs.
Man, it's crazy.
And so
That's
I
cool. That's
need,
cool though. I mean, from when you started, I'm sure that makes you really proud of what you're doing.
oh yeah, yeah,
What it,
definitely.
so on that front though, so basically, one of the biggest things that, one way that, looking at it from just through logic could be, there's probably little things that, you could have somebody do to where it wouldn't interfere with the quality, but it could buy you
Yeah,
time and help with that time side of things. Like you said, having somebody do the polish work or,
yeah,
that kind of thing. And then the other option, I guess, would be training somebody and having somebody apprentice under you until they're fully ready to take
yeah,
on something and you've been with them and you've kind of developed that person to be able to put out the same quality of work with the same standards that you have.
yes, definitely. That's kind of my I don't know if you'd call it near future plan, but is to bring somebody on that could possibly do like parts or polishing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And like I've in the past, I've had a reputation of being late on several orders, and I I promise, like as true as I could be, it's not because I've deliberately been late. It's because I put so much pressure on myself in saying I did 5 pairs today. How can I sustain that?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I know like for me when I've, ordered ropes and stuff in the past, and really
Yeah,
anytime I order equipment that's being made, especially if it's being made, custom, uh, like I have a timeline, like I'm expecting to wait. I know the
yeah,
rope standards, like, if you're not willing to wait 4 months for a custom rope, that's about what pretty much the standard wait time is,
yeah,
depending on the year. You know, sometimes like I'm not quite as picky with my ropes as a lot of guys, so there's a lot of times where I'll have somebody make me a rope, and I'm like, look, I'm not as picky. I just need to make sure the handle's not too big or the tail's not too
yeah,
big.
yeah,
And so then a lot of times people will have one in stock that I can get it quick. But outside of that, like, as far as for rodeo people is understanding there is a wait time, so you better order before you need it.
yeah, yeah,
And even having a backup isn't bad. Like even now I have a backup 100X helmet, and just through the years I've learned if I don't have a backup of, any of my
yeah.
equipment, then I'm probably not in a great spot.
Well, I guess that kind of works both ways, especially for the Spurs, because if Spurs are something that you can ride with a rope that's kind of wore out or whatever for a little while, but Spurs, you think you want to change the angle, you need that change right now.
All
It's
right.
not
Yeah.
it's not something that your Spurs are going bad, but
Yeah, 100%. Well, and there are some spurs that aren't very quality, and
yeah,
you
yeah,
will, freaking, you just get raked off one time on the shoots, and that spur. I watched buddy Travis Karhoff get on one, freaking completely just turn his spur all the way into the side of his boot.
yeah,
I was like, dang.
yeah. Actually, I I bent two spurs when I was riding real heavy. I bent two of them by spurring on one.
Yeah, yeah. If you're booting one, that can definitely, and freaking, it'll hurt your freaking heel too.
Yeah,
When I had them
yeah,
3-inch shanks, and like
yeah.
I don't I like to get really cheap dress boots to ride in because I feel like
Okay.
they're the lightest. It really has nothing to do with anything other than weight, and it's super low quality leather, so it's super light. And I
Mm-hmm.
found that honestly they've lasted me just as long as a good quality set, but a lot of times the leather is, super moldable, so I don't have to break them in, when I'm, putting my straps around and my boot straps. So
Yeah,
I always get ones like that, but the problem is when you go to kick on one, man, you will
yeah.
get off sometimes and your freaking heel will be throbbing.
Uh, Speaking about boots, like you'll find this funny. When I was riding, see, I broke my leg and had an ankle plate put in my ankle, and after that, it was like I couldn't wear pull-on boots because it wasn't enough support for my ankle. So I switched to lace-ups for a while, and then I was somewhere and my boot ripped or something, and I needed a pair of boots. Well, there was a girl that was there, and she let me wear her English riding boots, and that became my favorite pair of riding
An
boots.
English riding boot. Man, I that
Yeah,
may be my near future because I just freaking mess my freaking ankle and leg up pretty bad. And
yeah,
that's one thing I've been thinking about just because now that I'm like walking on it, I can tell like I know I'm gonna have to like, get extra support, gonna have to probably tape
yeah,
it up, especially when I first come back. But I was wondering about my boots too, because I
yeah.
don't have hardly any padding on my boots. Like it's like really thin
Well,
leather.
well, see, with me, it was almost like ever since they put that plate in there, I had a wobbly feeling, and I still do to this day. It's like a wobbly feeling in my ankle, and I was first using Ariat lace-up boots, and that's the most support. like I never taped my ankle or anything. Just using
You
them
just
area
lace up.
lace up was perfect. But then when I used them English riding boots, and they're a women's version, but they're black and they got a zipper in the front. Like I loved them.
Um, yeah, Keith Hall, he wore lace ups. I don't know. I don't think he is now. He wore lace ups for a long time. And
Yeah,
then honestly, I haven't seen any lately, but there was guys that went through that phase where they were getting regular pull-up boots, right?
yeah,
Pull-up boots, and then they would freaking cut it, and
yeah,
then
and
they
then
would
put
make,
laces.
yeah, they'd put laces in it and make them look lace ups. And
Yeah,
I think maybe too, because there's not really that I know of, there's not any like lace up, like bull riding lace up boots.
yeah,
So like boots that really fit that bull rider style but are lace up. So people just started doing it themselves.
yeah.
But I haven't
And
seen them
and,
in a minute. So
and I think that was one of the ideas that the Brazilians came over with.
probably. Yeah, probably.
They have so many, like
Hey, great
all their
ideas.
different. Yeah, yeah,
Freaking their straps. I'll never use any other straps other than what them Brazilians are putting out
yeah,
there. You know, they have a perfect setup to where, I can slip my freaking Spurs on. I don't have to wire them down, use cable,
yeah.
and the straps that go around that tie on the top and then they wrap around your boots and yeah, genius.
They definitely put a lot of thought into it.
Yeah,
And it,
100%.
it goes with everything. The ropes or spurs, all of it.
Yeah, they're always thinking about something, whether it's comfort, whether it's something to give them an advantage. Yeah,
Yeah,
talk a little bit about these. You mentioned earlier with the Brazilian style Spurs. Now,
yeah.
there's probably some
Okay.
listeners that don't really understand what you're saying. So,
Okay.
explain a little bit about what that style's like and what that looks like when they put them in. How do they even explain that?
A lot of times when they order, I'll start from the back. A lot of times when they order, they send me a picture, and the way it works is, like, I can almost tell exactly what they're going to order most of the time, because if it's a new face, a Brazilian, he's going to start out with that Brazilian style. And then eventually he'll come around, like Kaique. I think he still wears them. He's one of the only older
He does.
Brazilians that still
He
wear that
does. Yeah,
style.
that's actually I was watching him. I forget what event I was at, and I I didn't I'd never really noticed, what Spurs he was wearing. And he was walking by and I was looking down and I guess I saw his Spurs and I was
Yeah.
like, "Dang, that's interesting. I didn't even know it was legal in the PBR, but apparently it
Now
is."
the the actual shape of it is genius, in my opinion. And I can't remember if it was Kaique or Savano. One of them explained it to me in Vegas one year. It comes down, you've seen it come down off of
Yep.
the heel band at like a 45-degree angle, and then it goes straight out. Well, if you visualize the side of a bull's belly, it comes down and then slants. So it fits underneath their belly perfect.
Interesting.
Yep.
Huh.
It's the exact shape of the underbelly.
That's fascinating. I didn't. So that's kind of, I guess, the purpose behind it.
Yeah,
And they
that's
they
it.
almost look like they have a little bit of a teardrop up at the very end.
Well,
That's what it looks
according to
like.
according to they try to get away with that. Like, according to PBR, you can't have any part of it that goes up.
Yeah.
And like they'll send me,
Mm.
like, especially like, and that may be why the fresh faces send me a picture that they want them, because
Uh-huh.
they know that they can't ride in them. And I always, whenever I build a set like that, the end of it's always straight instead of up.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
I built a set for Shane Proctor. I don't know if he's still riding in that set or not, but he said that he wore them, and he said it was just like having knot holes without being in his rope.
And his rope, that's funny. Well, when Patrick sent me his Junior Patrick
Yeah,
Souza, and those were like the older ones, that he had. He
yeah,
wasn't riding in them. And they definitely had a little bit. I mean, they were coming up a little bit. And
yeah,
honestly, there's a few guys that that do, and it's not like they really come down. So some of it, I don't know how much it really is coming up, but I think that some of them have a little bit of an upturn to them. It's not crazy. It's not
Yeah.
like Mike Lee did where he turned his shank, cut it
Oh
off,
yeah.
flipped it upside down. Not
Or,
that.
or or like the set that I built him that the shanks were upside down.
You built this for him?
I
That's
built. I don't know if that's the set you're talking about, but I
okay.
know I built him a set where the shanks was upside down.
Upside down.
I was thinking when he ordered them, I was thinking you got to have a death wish.
Hey, Denton Fugate and Keith Hall, they always say you can't be scared to win. So, I mean, Mike Lee ain't scared to win. I'll tell you that.
Well, he definitely wasn't because another thing that I did to his purse, they didn't have a button for the strap underneath. It was just a
Oh,
hole. He wanted to screw them to his boots.
oh, nice. Interesting. Yeah, that's
So
fascinating. So, like the
if he got
heel,
caught in there,
so he just drill a hole through his heel, I'm guessing?
yeah,
And
yeah.
then, huh.
I don't know if he put a cable through there or screwed it to his heel or I don't know. I didn't ask questions about that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Because I was thinking to myself, you're screwing these to your boots, your shanks upside down. If you get caught in your rope, like they can't help you.
Yeah, you ain't coming out. Well, that one time, I guess it was I don't know, was it the Iron Cowboy? I'm not sure what event it was, but he like when he came off, his hands were in the air and he's just like
Yeah,
flailing on both sides. I think that was maybe the event they're like, okay, we got to ban these, not for
yeah,
the safety of the bull riders because we don't really care what they do. It's really for the
yeah,
safety of the bullfighters and the stock.
yeah. You're
I
exactly
probably
right.
agree. There's probably some cases where you went a little bit overboard.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like the row rule. Like some of the rows they was getting kind of out of hand
Oh
before
man,
they come up with that.
there's some beefy ones out there. I've never with the whole rows. I started using co-shell rows super early on.
Yeah,
So I really don't even know much difference as far as like experientially understanding the difference in these.
yeah,
I'm really
yeah,
unaware because, and I also have been using a rope body for so long that I know guys will get the big fat stitch body,
yeah,
and
yeah,
oh, heck, Mason Taylor when he first came up. I'll never
yeah,
forget looking at that freaking old, I don't know, barstool rope or something like that. A
yeah.
knot freaking that big on a stitch body rope, and freaking, what he was grabbing, everything.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, with the row idea, it's like I tell my son, if you have any intention on going to the PBR, then you might as well just get used to them, whether you
Yeah,
like them or not.
right. Yeah, and I don't like changing my equipment a whole lot. So I'm not one that's just big on changing equipment. And so,
Yeah,
I for me it's like if you're gonna have to use this here, I'm gonna use it everywhere.
yeah. I mean, it's like I don't know if you know him, but Brandon Chambers,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, like I've known him ever since he got on his first bull, and he told me when he ordered his Spurs, he said I don't change nothing. He said so. He said we're buddies. He said, but this is probably the last pair of Spurs I'm gonna get from you.
That's funny. The only thing I obviously I get new ropes and I feel like, getting on better bulls. If you're getting on better bulls more consistently, it wears
Yeah.
your ropes down. So I find that
Oh
I'm
yeah.
going through more ropes
Definitely.
nowadays than when I first started going to amateur deals where I could make a rope last, a year, year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah.
Nowadays I feel like, a good new rope that really fits the quality and what I like out of a rope will only last me maybe a quarter of the season. I'm
Yeah.
probably needing about 4 ropes a year, but also that's partly due to what kind of rope I use. And I kind of like Blake Lewis style, kind of that Brazilian rope, but more of a smaller kind, almost American block, smaller Brazilian block. They wear
Yeah.
down a little faster. And those rank bulls, when I first got on tour a couple years ago, where I actually got on tour to where I was going there multiple events.
Yeah.
I remember Cody Nance talking to me about it because I was like, man, my ropes are wearing out. And he's like, you're gonna have to get, a lot more ropes because, when you start getting on better bulls a lot more,
Okay, yeah.
your ropes will wear out. But spurs, that's not the case at all. So,
Yeah.
guys really can
Hmm.
use a set of spurs for a long time. I think I've
Yeah.
only had 4 spurs in my entire career.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's with me changing spurs, not because I
Not
needed
them
to.
wearing out. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not wearing out. That's just because I wanted to change lengths or styles.
Well, it's kind of like you listen to a lot of business like information and videos and stuff, or I do anyway, and they always talk about customer retention. Well, I almost feel like the spur world is in a spot to where you can't focus on retention in the sense that the guys are only getting one or two pairs total.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, there's also guys that probably go through them a lot, and you see their face quite
Yeah,
frequently. I know, and
yeah,
I don't know how many times Quentin gets new Spurs, but Quentin Vault goes through equipment like anybody I've ever seen. The
yeah.
man freaking
He's ordered a couple pairs
he
from me.
changes it up, and even if it's the same freaking thing, it's just like like
Yeah.
he's got probably 50 billion vests and every glove he's ever had's hanging up on the wall, and
Well, it's like I don't know if it's an actual ritual or whatever, but it seems like at the NFR every year everybody starts out with new stuff, and I'm over here thinking, well, I know they're not going to start out with new Spurs. That'll completely.
you know what? This new season when it starts up in, November, hopefully
Yeah,
I think I should be back in November.
yeah,
I'll go around and I'll start doing little interview things, just asking guys on how quick they're going through equipment
yeah,
and get some data on that because that would be interesting. Like how many vests are you going to opposed to how many freaking spurs you're going to?
yeah.
And
I would.
honestly, vests,
I,
that's an interesting thing because I think guys should go through vests way more than they do. Like you should at
well,
least be replacing padding probably in your vest every 6 months, to be honest.
you know what I think that is? Like I've thought about that. Like 100X, they do a good job of promoting how important the padding is. With the vest company, they never push it.
Never.
They're just selling the vest.
Well, and this is an interesting thing too. Ride Right versus you're too big or Phoenix and Ride Right. And
Yeah, yeah,
what's that other company that they're just now starting to maybe gain some traction and that's kind of cool to see. Um we'll think about it. I'll probably think of it later. But there's another one that's kind of more of a hard. It's like an in between that hard style, like
yeah,
bullfighting vest, and you know your regular vest. But
yeah.
um, the difference between Phoenix and Ride Right is Ride Right. You can't replace the padding inside of it without like
Okay,
cutting it. Like it's not made to where you can take it out. Whereas
yeah.
Phoenix, it's made to replace the padding inside of it.
Oh, I
Now
didn't know that. I
they
always had Phoenix, but I didn't know that that was a thing.
yeah, on the inside on the back part, it actually has a slit there to where you can
Yeah,
pull the
I know
padding
that.
out, right? Yeah, so
Yeah,
you can replace all that padding in there and it's meant to do that. I haven't looked to see like, how much it cost or buying it from Phoenix, but I assume that's what it's meant for, not freaking washing it.
yeah. It's
But
like I told you.
Ride Right doesn't.
It's like I told you. I work with TK Specialties, and um, I've tried to explain to him he needs to push that is the safest vest,
Yeah.
and push that side of it.
TK and so this other company is like TK, but they're not
Okay,
quite as extreme as TK. TK is even
okay,
harder shelled. And
yeah, yeah,
for sure on getting stepped on in safety, it's
yeah,
100% more safe to have that hard shell. I would almost guarantee it.
yeah,
Um, but I feel is an interesting thing, and you're in such a dangerous sport already. Like,
yeah,
it's like me telling Dakota Eagleburger every time I get in my freaking van and the headrests on the back, he'll take them
yeah,
off so that he can wear his cowboy hat when he's driving. Well, there's a reason that those are on there so that you don't freaking snap your neck if you get in a wreck. But he
Well,
doesn't wear a helmet when he rides bulls. So who am I to be like, hey, Dakota, it's a lot safer if you freaking actually put that headrest and let it do
yeah,
its job. So
see, I was kind of me starting out in like '98 and that like safety was probably one of the last things I ever thought about. Like winning was way more important than not getting hurt. And I always like I can kind of see both sides of it actually.
there's definitely both sides to it. Like you're in a sport where you have to have that no reserve,
Yeah,
where
yeah,
that's out. But at the same time, like if this is your career and you're actually making a living doing
yeah,
it, there's certain things where, if you can prevent getting hurt and you can prevent, not missing 2 months of the year, well,
yeah,
now you can actually make money. Whereas, if you do, get messed up and you have to miss, 2 or 3 months because of something you could have prevented,
yeah,
now on a
yeah.
business side and a career standpoint, that does not make sense financially. It really doesn't make sense even if you just love getting on bulls because you're not going to be able to.
Yeah. Like 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 I've thought about it a lot. Like there's plenty of decisions I could have made back then to lengthen a career, which I didn't get out for health reasons by no means. The reason why I got out is just simply because Spurs took over.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And you love doing it?
yeah, yeah. And like as far as the health side of it, like I think back, I should have made this decision then instead of going full out for it. And maybe that would have made a difference. But then how do you as a bull rider judge what's what?
Yeah.
Like am I making a business decision or am I making a winning decision?
Man. Yeah. Well, and sometimes it's either, sometimes it's not, you know, sometimes it's either or.
Yeah,
Man, it changes things. There is times, especially, so the great example of this is this shortened season that the PBR has now,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So a shortened season like this, now that really changes things because when it's a longer season, the winning decision may be to, okay, I need to take a weekend, I need to take 2 weekends off. I need to do this so that I can actually perform
okay,
at a
yeah,
higher
makes
level,
sense. Yeah,
and riding hurt is not going to benefit me in the long run. And but if it's a shortened season, well, now you're really forced to ride through a lot of stuff that maybe you wouldn't have rode beforehand.
yeah,
You look at even this year. Look at how the World Series, the World Series, the World Title and the season worked out last year in the PBR,
yeah,
where honestly that time off that riders took very easily probably cost them a world title.
yeah.
You look at
You're
Jose; he spent a lot of time off,
you're
and
exactly right.
he could have rode, and Jose the freaking beast, and
Yeah,
he would have rode. He may not have
yeah,
won every freaking event, but he may have. But
yeah,
he could have maybe came back 2 weekends early, and
yeah,
straps 3 bulls, and that could have put him, right there over the top at the world finals. I mean, some of that's speculative, you really don't know. And that's just an example, and certainly I don't know everything that he was dealing with, and there's
yeah,
certain things that come into play, but now too you have two different seasons, right? So now you have a team series and now you have a regular season. Well, that even adds a little bit more. So now it's like, okay, well, yeah, I could go after this individual world title, but by pushing through this, it's going to hurt me for the team series. And do you
yeah,
balance, and what do you sacrifice in doing all of that? So I think that the complexity of that question is 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 rather deep when you really get into it, and it's super individual and what you're
well,
after.
one thing that I question, and I hope one of them higher ups like watch this video on this idea, is why can't it both be one season?
Well,
Like
I
like
think
NASCAR.
so.
NASCAR's one season with
Live,
teams and individuals.
yeah, Live does it too. Live Golf. And
Okay.
what they did is the exact same thing. So live how it works, and I think this is how NASCAR works, but I know in the golfing world, live works like this. Okay, so you have a tournament of X amount of guys. I don't know if it's 45. Like I'm not sure what the exact number is, but so you have that tournament, and everybody's playing for an individual title of that
Yeah.
tournament, right? And
Yeah.
they get individual payouts. However, they're also part of a team, and
Yeah.
they compile each of those individuals into a team. So now they're the team payout at the end, and there's an individual payout.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's an individual title, and there's a team title. The PBR is not. I don't. It's not really like that. They still have the MVP, so they kind of have
Yeah.
little hints of that, and I like that. But from what I hear, again, this is what I've heard from what is said, right?
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean a whole lot because transparency is at an all-time low when it comes
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
this kind of stuff. But like Sean, initially he had said that he wants to have a regular season and he
Yeah.
wants to have a team series. Okay, and Sean Gleason said this on um the NFP podcast, um,
Okay.
that he wants to have, the regular season that will still pay out $1 million bonus, and then he
Yeah.
wants to have the team series. And the transition though will look like the team series as being like the premier tour, and
Yeah.
all the people that still want the individual title still can do the regular season, but that will become more of, kind of a offshoot or a kind of a lower level because most
Yeah.
of the guys will want to be on the team. However, I think that's changed from what I'm hearing now. What they've even talked about, they told us at the PBR meetings, Kent, who is over
Yeah.
that department, with the team series stuff, he talked about them wanting to build like a minor league system. So now
Okay.
right now you have the UTB, right? And you
Yeah.
have the Velocity Tour. Now the
Yeah.
Velocity Tour is an extension tour. It's not really a minor league system, although it's kind of is. It's an
Yeah.
extension tour. It hits
Mhm.
all of the cities that the big tour doesn't hit, right? And
Yeah.
so instead of having that system, they would have a team series, which would be, the right now it's the Camper World Team Series, right? And then
Yeah.
they would have a
Yeah.
minor league system where each of those teams would have in a different city a minor league team, and
Okay.
it would work more like that, which is closer to what you see in like baseball, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but again, all of this stuff is not, that's just what I've heard. I don't know
I,
much more than that.
I just almost feel like separating them diminishes the value of a world title.
Oh, it definitely does. No, the world
And
title is not only diminished, it's purposely diminished. They really
yeah.
are putting what, that tradition, the traditional bull riding, they are really
Yeah.
they're changing from that. And they're
And
purposely going the other direction.
I almost wonder, and like I'm not in there like you, but I wonder if it's driving a wedge between team riders, individual riders.
I don't know. That's a good question. We will find out. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I don't know, and I don't know
I
what
mean,
the
I'm sure there's some of them that's still going to be the same, but I'm sure there somewhere in there there's boiling animosity between the two.
there could be. I don't know. I haven't sensed that. I think time will tell on a lot of it. I think right now, as far as from the contestant point of view and the rider standpoint,
Yeah.
every a lot of the riders are still in this not completely. I don't want to say we're not sold on it. I mean, I think the idea, a lot of guys are sold on the idea of it. It's
Yeah.
really it's really the ability to execute on those ideas in a way that the writers can actually stand behind it and be as sold on this idea as they are on the traditional way of doing things. And I
Yeah.
think the idea itself is amazing. I
Yeah.
love the
I
idea of
agree.
PBR teams, and I love the idea of what that can actually do for athletes and riders, and really even the coaches and stuff like that. But, and this is a big but, it has to
Yeah.
be executed right. If it's not
Yeah.
executed right, if the riders, if this is a way of taking control of the riders and the riders having, you know, little of or no say and of importance. So it's one thing if you're getting paid $3 million
Yeah.
and, you know, and all the riders are making tons of money, then that's different than if the riders are the last ones to get fed, you know,
Yeah.
but they're the
Yeah.
ones that taking all the risk. Then that whole idea really isn't executed the way that it should be, and so you have to have some level of grace with the team stuff because it's just brand new. It's a brand new
Yeah.
sport. And
Like,
so,
I really like you. Like I like the idea of it, and I like that it's progress, and that progress means better eventually. But I really like you. I think they need to build that trust with the rider first.
yeah, I think it's important. And I'm not, I don't know if they will or will not, I don't know. I know that this whole process that they've done lately has not. I can tell you in the locker room, outside of, some of the guys who, you know, are maybe sold on it, there's still a lot of guys that aren't sold on this process. And
Yeah,
they've really, they've abused the trust of the riders,
yeah,
and
yeah,
really they've used them for marketing purposes. And
yeah,
that's really that's a bad thing when you start using your athletes to market yourself, but at the expense of your athletes. Like, you know, just like that market you're talking about, like there's bull riders, there's a there's you're not selling Spurs for $800 a pop or a thousand
yeah,
dollars a pop, right? There is a ceiling there. Well, there's also, when you have an organization that's really abusing their contestants' financial ability to do things, that's an
yeah,
issue. And the PBR has been known to do that. There's most of the stuff you see that the PBR does, I say most, there's some, but most of it, the athletes aren't getting paid for, and they're
yeah,
certainly, if they are, they're not getting paid a lot for. Um,
yeah,
I think it even, you have specific people that the PBR decides, okay, we want to use this person as a face, that can be different. But when
yeah,
you break down like holistically all of the riders, and if you have 100 guys, that are going regularly, you know,
yeah.
they've really abused kind of those people that are either just coming up outside of a few,
Well,
or even just the guys that have been grinding it out and they've committed their lives to this sport, and they may not be winning a world title.
well, one thing I always wonder, like you go to Vegas and you see like the "Who's Hot" posters everywhere, and I often wonder, do they really have a choice if they're the poster person? Like
Well,
like
I think you do. You do have a choice, okay? And that's a great question. And I think that, you know, this is an interesting place we're in, right? So
yeah,
the writers have a choice, right, to say I'm
mhm,
worth this, you know.
yeah,
However, it's not just that simple, because you can say that, but at the end of the day, if you try to say no, like, what are the consequences of that? What are the consequences of not
exactly,
conforming to the way that way?
yeah,
Well, the fear is amongst writers, whether it's said or not, is that the consequences of me saying this is what I'm worth, is that I'll lose my entire career, and what I'm doing within this industry, or really within the PBR, if you wanna say that.
yeah,
So, like, and that's the thing. I know within the PBR contracts, for instance,
yeah,
these contracts of majority, like when you sign this contract, you sign for a team, you are required to show up to X amount of appearances, right?
okay, yeah,
However, I also know that outside of those contracts, that a lot of these teams are almost requiring or telling guys to show up to way more and to do above and beyond what's even
well, I can see where that
contractual.
would be. I could see where that would be held against a guy if he only went
Yep.
to the minimum.
Right, correct. But that's
And
unfortunate though. And this doesn't work out. What's fascinating, this isn't how it works in all the other sports. And
yeah,
so there is, and again, there's some level of grace here, because hopefully some of this will change, you know, but also, um, in other sports, like it actually gets legitimate, and that's where you're not going to see it, because Sean Gleason is adamantly against it, and the PBR, the corporate PBR is against
yeah,
any type of union. But I'm not saying that all unions are good either, because believe
no,
me,
no,
I'm
but
not pro union in it as a generalization. However, when you have a corporate that's actually getting to a specific point, that players union, like you have in these other
Yeah.
sports, actually helps protect guys and makes sure that guys' value is always protected to where
You're,
they're not
you're
getting
exactly right.
abused. And so
You're exactly right.
I think it
And
had
I really think it's going to have to come to that in order for both sides to be happy.
I do too, and I think I say I'm hopeful. I am hopeful that at some point, that'll work out. There's been I won't name names, but
Yeah.
there's other guys involved in the PBR right now that are in very important and key places that come from backgrounds that are not bull riding, but in
Yeah.
other sports, and they agree that a players union is actually, there should be a players union. Like they don't see why not. However, the PBR is not for that. And Sean Gleason's been very vocal in any riders who have ever even suggested unionization, which there's been a few times where it's came to one event. One event almost did not even happen in the PBR.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like 5 minutes before the event, the UTV event, and riders didn't even have their gear bag out of their van.
Oh, wow.
So there's been a lot of tension on this whole side for a minute. I think the unionization, having a players union, would benefit the riders, and you'd think it would even not be a detriment to the organization, because then if the riders are happy, then the organization should, be happy with how that. And there's guidelines, within those players unions that are for the benefit of everybody, you know.
Well,
Um,
you think
so
that if they would allow the union to work out, then that would boost morale
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
all the way across because one's working to help the other.
Yeah, 100%. So I don't know. Maybe that's gonna happen, but I do know that right now there's not a players union, and
Yeah.
I think that ov overwhelmingly the answer would be yes. We want a players union if you ask the riders. The
Yeah.
riders would actually prefer a players union. The corporate right now is does
Yeah.
not want a players union. I don't know what that looks like in the future if that ever changes. Um, I know the way the PBR is set up legally,
Yeah.
that's where they can put their foot down. It's how we're
Yeah.
paid as riders, and all of that, because we're technically individual contractors. When we do our
Yeah.
taxes
Yeah.
and stuff, and so there's stuff there that does give the power in the PBR's hands. Plus, Endeavor's got all the money in the world. So if you
Yeah.
really wanted to try and stand up against them, you would never win any legal battle, because whenever you come to that kind of stuff, it's not who's right, it's who
Yeah.
has the most money,
You're exactly right.
for the most part. So I don't know, but I think the players union would be a good idea. But I'd love the concept of the teams. I think that, that concept and idea that Sean Gleason, and I'm sure whoever his team is, put together, I
Yeah.
applaud them on that idea. I really believe in that idea. But if
I
it's not
think in order
executed,
for them,
it won't work.
I think in order for them to get paid like Major League Baseball and NFL, it has to be this team
Yeah.
concept.
Well, it has to be, because you're going to have uh first of all, you're going to have people that have money
Yeah.
competing again, and when you have, these team owners that are actually competing for a world title, and all of a sudden, there's a lot there, right? And there's a lot on
Yeah.
the line. Well, now these owners are going to want to win, and they're gonna pay to win. And so
Well,
then,
well, well, like the PBR now has a huge fan base, but you look at NFL, the NFL doesn't have the huge fan base. The teams have individually have the fan
correct.
base.
Yeah. And
And
I think the money should follow too, because I think this is another thing within that side of things. Now that we got on this team subject,
yeah.
but so before, riders individually get sponsors, right? So I'll get a sponsor that will pay me X amount of dollars,
Yeah.
say 100,000, just as a place number, not
Yeah.
anything. So say it's an easy number, $100,000 for this season, right? Well, now if I go to a team, I don't get that sponsor I can't wear anymore. So I lose
Yeah.
that sponsorship, right? So
Yeah.
now that team better, be paying me enough to say,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to
Yeah.
lose this sponsor. So, that's a big part too. So, as you're saying though, even to the point where there's a lot of pro athletes that if they show up to Walmart and they're just in their regular clothes, nobody will even know who they are. Outside of there's some stupid famous ones,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But if they were wearing a jersey, then
Yeah.
everybody knows who they are. They recognize them immediately.
Yeah.
So, like, you're giving up a lot as an individual brand to go on this team concept. So it makes sense that the money should follow and that would be a sacrifice you're willing to make due to, the compensation that you're making. And
Yeah.
I think the PBR again, what they've done good about this last year, ironically, when they got their hand out and sold the two remaining teams that they owned,
Yeah.
is they placed a minimum to where there is a minimum pay, amongst riders.
Okay, they put a
Even
cap
on,
on it.
yep,
Yeah.
even on practice squads. Like you can't, if this player is on your team, whether they're on the practice squad or not, they have to make X amount of dollars.
Yeah.
Now, what was the kickback of this? Well, I think it's a great thing. However, if you've noticed, most of these teams don't have a full roster, not through
Yeah.
their practice
Yep.
squads. What the team said is, well, we don't need practice squads anymore because we don't want to pay
Yep.
the guys that. So I there's some fascinating stuff. Now, it would be another thing if the PBR said, okay, we see what you're doing. You have to have a full team and practice squad in order to
Yeah.
your team to be active. Now you're talking about expanding, benefiting the riders. Those are things I don't know if they'll happen or how that's going to be worked. But I
Yeah.
did notice that last year everybody had a full practice squad. And then this year, there's a couple teams that do. I believe Cord McCoy's team may be one of them that legit has like 13 or
Okay.
14 guys. I don't
Yeah.
know. But I'm not sure which team it is. I think it's his. However, this year there's not as many practice guys because
Yeah.
they have to be paid. So
Yeah.
teams are just saying, well, we don't really need practice. So that's another thing though, if they add a minor league system that could expand, what that
Yeah.
looks like and providing, you know, obviously if they do away with the regular season, they will have to. It'll force their
Yeah.
hand. They won't survive just by doing just the big team series and no tour underneath that.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. Yep.
Because then guys will make a decision early on to go pro rodeo, and that'll
Yeah.
happen. They'll lose a lot of their
Like I
memberships.
almost
Insurance
wonder
money,
if,
that's the big thing they make money off of. They'll lose a lot of insurance money.
yeah, I wonder if what's going on now with PBR, if that's driving more people to look PRC's direction.
I don't know. I think right now we're in a weird spot where some guys
Yeah.
are getting feelers out, even PRCA guys. And you know, there's a lot of these pro rodeo guys that are, Sage Kimsey's and stuff that they belong at the
Yeah.
highest level. They freaking that good. Period.
Oh
Right?
yeah. Yeah.
So, but I think there's an interesting thing that's going to happen here shortly. If they go to a full bozo, full year PBR team series, you're not going to have guys pro rodeoing and PBRing
Oh no.
at
No.
the same
Definitely.
time. Not quite as much. It's going to make it much more difficult.
Yeah.
Although, especially if you're required to go to X amount of events,
Yeah.
there could be some pro rodeo guys who, are already qualified, some of the top guys that could just maybe go to the big pro rodeos, the big
Yeah.
events, and then uh go PBRs the rest of the year. And if win enough at those big events, they could make the NFR. But for
Yeah.
the most part, it's gonna force guys to make a decision one way or the other.
Yeah.
That'll be another interesting thing because while I'm all about, I'm all about any of these bull riders. Like, hey, if you can make some money,
Yeah.
riding bulls, if this is helping you right now and this is put you in a good spot financially, go for it, do it.
Yeah.
But I don't know that all of these pro rodeo guys are so sold that they would choose the PBR over the NFR. Does that make sense? If it's
I,
ever a
I I
decision,
agree with you.
if it's ever a decision whether it's the yellow shoots or the PBR team series finals, unless the money is stupid, I don't
Yeah.
see
I
a lot
agree.
of
I
guys
agree
switching over.
100%.
And I
I
do
agree.
see guys that will say, I'm done with the PBR, I'm going to go pro rodeo. And we're already seeing that. there's multiple guys this year that were, the last 2 years, there's multiple guys that you see rode in the PBR, very successful in the PBR, and said, no,
Yeah,
I'm not about this. I'm going PRCA. Cole Melanson's one of them.
yeah,
He's been rodeoing and he's not been going, he's not on UTV. He hasn't been. Is he
yeah,
good enough? Definitely is.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so you
Well,
see actually multiple guys that are doing that.
it's one of them things like I don't care what bull rider you are, the 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 anxiety, I guess might not be the right word, but the thrill to ride in the yellow bucking chutes is there, no matter what level of bull rider you are. And I don't think you'll ever take that away because, and I think the PRC has done awesome in that by not changing anything.
Tradition is a big deal. So
Yeah,
this is an interesting thing. Tradition is a really big deal.
yeah,
And it's what made that deal with like Live and the PGA monstrous because it takes a lot to overthrow tradition,
yeah, yeah,
to even be able to get in and stir things up. It takes a lot. You have a
yeah,
PGA that has more tradition than just about any other freaking sports organization. And it
yeah,
took a lot of money, billions of dollars, to be able to, you know, pull up an association that can compete with it. And the PRCA has been um, very traditional, and they've
yeah,
really, been on that side, and they have a long history. And I think that, on that side of things, they're in a good place. What's interesting with PBR is if they get to the point where they're sacrificing the regular season, they're kind of getting away from their own tradition, starting up something new. It's a big risk. That's a
yeah,
huge risk. Like
definitely.
because the best case scenario, if it doesn't work out, would be it would go back to the regular season, but that would still be a detriment to the tradition because that part, those 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, however long,
That
they'd lose a
morale.
lot. They'd lose a
Yeah,
lot out of it. However, I think they're fully committed. They definitely fully committed, and I do
yeah,
believe the idea has enough behind it to actually flourish. And obviously, you're seeing major companies that are getting behind this team deal as far as their own
yeah,
branding. So
yeah,
these new companies and new sponsors are starting to show up, and you're starting to see them kind of try to attach themselves to these teams and all of that. So
yeah, definitely.
I wonder, one of the big things I wonder with that whole ordeal will be the TV contracts. And that's something that, so right now PBR has a deal with CBS Sports, right? Okay,
Yeah,
well, other sports leagues, the owners and these teams make their money a lot off the TV contracts. So like for instance, I'm in St. Louis. When I want to watch the Cardinals, I can't just go to TV. I have to go to Bally Sports, right? That's a contract between
okay, yeah,
the team and the network.
yeah,
So that's how a lot of these teams make money. Right now, that's not the case with these PBR deals, and these teams are
well,
making
I
no money off
wonder.
of TV contracts. So I don't know
Here,
if that changes or not.
here's my question, especially as far as that goes, because I've studied it a lot on the Slingin Shanks side. Is I wonder how much longer the networks and stuff is going to be in the equation because with the way YouTube and social media is, I wonder if they might become their own network.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know with CBS Sports, so like Pluto TV, right?
Yeah,
That's owned by CBS. So,
yeah,
I do know that a lot of it's going more on the streaming route, and we're seeing that certainly in these apps and stuff. But I'm not sure on that. That's an interesting equation whether like the PBR starts up their own network. Really, though, it would have to be the teams. I think the monetary side for team ownership would have to be, again, it could be a lack of my understanding, but from what I understand, you know, monetarily, these TV contracts and making deals um on that end is where the money's at for like ownership and stuff.
well, like my biggest question, like like with what I was saying there, maybe I worded it wrong, but like say for example, Mr. Beast, the richest
Yeah.
YouTuber. Why would you spend all that money on the network side of it if you can get paid to put your video and event on YouTube?
Well, I think there's a couple things. I think one is with YouTube, right? For instance, if you use YouTube as an example, they've been
Yeah.
known to ban people. So
Okay.
there's a lot of stuff you have to worry about on being like canceled
Okay.
on
Okay.
doing that.
Yeah.
And I don't know what all the other stuff as far as like your sponsors and stuff, but I know there's certain things you cannot do on YouTube.
Okay. Okay.
Another deal is
That's
I believe this is true. I believe that the PBR gets paid by CBS Sports, not the other way around. So I
Oh, okay.
believe that
Okay.
the network's actually paying. So basically, you have CBS, right? And
Yeah.
they have to fill all of these slots, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they make their money, but they pay in, these places to come in. It's the
Yeah.
same deal with all these streaming services, right?
Yeah.
So they pay, but they pay a lot less than like movie theaters. So like Bert Kreischer, he talked about this on one of the podcasts where he was talking about the movie and like, why not just go to the streaming services because that's where it's at. And he said, well, financially, the movie theaters, you make more money because you actually get a cut out of
Oh,
the
okay.
movie
Yeah.
sales, whereas
Yeah.
on the streaming side, you don't get a cut, you get a flat fee, and it's not as much. So,
All right.
so I
That
think
makes sense.
there's some details in there where the PBR is making their money from that contract. But the kicker is the PBR is making the money from the contract. The individual teams are not,
Yeah.
unless they fought enough and they're divvying it out to the teams. I doubt they're doing that, but unless that's happening, which is why I guess to see that, why are they coming out with all these little TV shows and stuff? Probably because the ownership's like, we have to monetize. We don't have a TV contract, so we better start like, the Thunder have these seasons and stuff like that. Like,
Okay. Yeah.
if you follow the money, you'll find where you want to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
But man, we've talked about Spurs, you getting started and the team
Yeah.
stuff. Man, it's been nice having you on here. I'll let you go.
Definitely.
But I'll definitely be staying in touch with you.
All right.
Um, maybe we'll
Yeah.
work out getting a cool pair of custom Spurs made that.
Yeah.
it-
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't need Spurs, but maybe you just want to, look cool. So you can get a cool pair of looking Spurs. I don't know. That would be Keith Hall's, his whole
I
thing.
actually had a guy in Vegas one year. He was a big businessman, and he thought the Spurs looked cool, and he wanted me to make him a set to sit on his desk at work.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, actually that wouldn't be a bad idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. Well, man, how can people find you? What are your social
All
media
right.
tags?
It's Slingin Shanks underscore or Slingin underscore Shanks on Instagram, and then Facebook. I think it's just Slingin Shanks. Uh, YouTube is Slingin Shanks, and Western Edge is Slingin Shanks.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely get on the app and check him out.
Basically,
And
basically, you can find it anywhere at Slingin Shanks.
yeah, if you Google Slinging Chicks, you can find him too. So, definitely you're the most well-known, bull riding spur maker, and I don't see that changing at all, no matter what. You've done such a great job on quality and making it affordable for the riders. I think everybody had good things to say about you.
Yeah,
But guys,
I
thanks for joining
appreciate it.
in. Thanks for joining in. Continue to follow Slingin Shank, see what he's doing. If you need spurs made, he is the place to go. You're not going to get a better pair of quality spurs for a better price. So thanks for joining in, guys. We'll see you.